Hello and assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to episode 2 of Televised Tuesdays with nadirahpierre, where we are talking about season 6 of Love is Blind. Let me just start off by thanking y'all because y'all watched the last video, you commented, you shared your thoughts. Even some people came over to my Instagram and let me know what they were thinking. Loved it. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I'll leave my handle right here. Follow me, come over there, let's chit chat, hop on one of my lives, we have a lot of fun. I also want to add a disclaimer. So I don't know, I'm very new to this review thing. I don't know where the girlies are getting the clips and the pictures and everything. Last time I found as many as I could, but I really wanted to add some more along with the things that I'm saying so that y'all could, I could really set the scene for y'all. So the only way that I could possibly do that, because if you know, Netflix does not let you, it doesn't let you screenshot. So I had to take pictures of my laptop on my phone so I could set the scene for y'all. I'm sorry. We'll try to get better and better at this, but that's what we got going on for right now. Also, as you can tell, I'm in a very different scenery. We're in my bedroom, so if the lighting gets weird, if some things changes, if you hear some noises outside my room, mind your business. I have family over this week, okay? But without further ado, let's get right into it. We start off with episode 7, the couples. Just for the sake of reminding you guys, we have Kenneth and Brittany, we have Jeramey and Laura, we have Johnny and Amy, and we have Jimmy and Chelsea. Those are our couples for the season. Those are all the couples. Oh my God. And we have AD and Clay. Forgot about the black love couple, whatever. So those are the couples that are currently engaged and they're heading back home. They're leaving the Dominican Republic. So leaving off on season 6, there was trouble in paradise, as there normally is. So start of season 7, we see Jimmy and Chelsea kiss and make up, which I feel like they never really do. They never really seem to get to the root of the problem. They kind of just move past it. And that is the reason I will always advocate for not dating a person that is conflict avoidant. Because they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm very forgiving. But they're not. They'll just move past the situation, but they'll never actually get over anything. They'll never actually work through anything. They'll never actually try to find common ground. They just try to smooth over it so that nobody gets angry and nobody gets hurt. But the problem never actually gets fixed. They just store it away. And at a later time, when there's a separate issue, they want to bring stuff back up. I just can't. I won't yuck your yum if you like conflict avoidant people, if you are a conflict avoidant person, but I can't do it. So Jimmy and Chelsea make up, and then we go to Brittany and Kenneth, where they are in the bathroom and they start having a conversation about race because they are an interracial couple. So Kenneth is, talking to Brittany about the conversation that he had with AD in regards to, is Brittany going to be prepared to raise interracial children with race as a phenotype, if these children were to present and appear as, and be black people, is that something that she's going to be prepared for? And Kenneth is telling Brittany, oh, I trust you. I feel like you're equipped. I want to push back on that because I feel like when you are having a baby specifically, it can apply to other races and ethnicities as well. But when you are specifically choosing to have a baby as a non-black person with a black person, and this is not to say Brittany might have, but you haven't had any formal training. You haven't worked through anything. You haven't talked to enough black people. You haven't done the work. I don't think you can just say you're equipped. It's not enough to just not be a racist. But when you choose to reproduce alongside and even be married to, be in community with, be in relationship with a black person, it's not enough to just not be racist. But you have to, especially as a white person, you have to actively be anti-racist. So for him to be like, oh, I trust you. Why? What has she done for you to be like, oh my God, I trust her? But whatever. They're super cringy anyway. they have this moment where they're having the conversation goes well, and then Kenneth gives Brittany a fist bump. And it's super just like, it's super cringe. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the whole thing with them is just super cringy. We also had an issue last episode with Jeramey and Laura with the whole thing with AD and on the beach and whatever. They make up. I love the fact that Laura is very transparent. She's very open. She's very honest. She tells him, like, the way you walked off the beach, it really triggered me. She says that she has past relationships where the person did that to her and it left her in limbo. And I really felt that. Jeramey apologized. He took accountability. But again, I feel like he kind of glossed over it. I don't feel like he really got into the particulars of like, this is how I was thinking, this is how I was feeling, anything like that. He was like, oh, I was completely wrong. I'm so sorry. Which, if that was all was needed and that was all he felt, then okay, cool, whatever. But something about it felt disingenuous. But what's crazy to me, Jeramey has the nerve to say to Laura, oh yeah, I feel like we're the number one couple here. Based upon what? Based upon what, Jeramey? Based upon what? Because you had one little conversation about an incident? Absolutely not, Miss Mamas. Absolutely not. We are back again to Kenneth and Brittany because again, they are still in the Dominican Republic. So we have a moment with them on a boat. They have a private boat and you can see Brittany is like fiending, like she's like begging. All of her body language is begging for Kenneth to touch her, to caress her, to hold her. She has a moment where he like lays back on the beach and he like puts his arm out, but he doesn't put it out so that she can lay down. He just puts it out and she has to say, okay, can you like move your arm up? She's taking his arm, draping it over herself, and it's super awkward. It's like she is on this boat. She's in a bikini. She's like, it's not like a thong, but it's like a, it's like a bikini that like cuts so much of her booty is out. Her boobs are out. She's looking great. I'm going to give it to my girl, Brittany. She's looking great. He's not touching her. He's not kissing her. He's not doing anything. No hand on the thigh. No, nothing. And she's like, you can tell she's like antsy because she wants him near her. She wants him to touch her. She wants to touch him. And then he just very awkwardly like just starts, like he has no awareness of it. He just starts looking at dolphins. He's like, oh my God, the dolphins. I swam with the dolphins once and blah, 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 blah. What, Kenneth? And I told you something was off and I thought it was going to be her. It's really him. There's something about him. I'm just really not that into them. So then we switch over to our Black power couple, not AD and Clay. They're having lunch. They're having lunch at a nice restaurant on the beach. Clay starts talking about the fact that he's Guyanese. He orders soup. It comes. He's tearing it up. And you very actively see AD getting the ick. He's like slurping the soup. He's like dancing. He's doing all these things. And AD is just kind of looking at him like, okay. To the point where AD was like, oh, is the soup good? And Clay was like, oh yeah, we locked in. What does that even mean, Clay? We don't even know what that means, Clay. But one thing is very apparent with Clay, he lacks sincerity. Like, I don't know what his reasoning was for coming on this show, but Clay is very clearly not being sincere. Very clearly, like, it's not hard to see that he's not being sincere. The fake smiles, the fake laughs, the kikikis. Clay, save it. And save AD because she deserves better. She deserves better. Then he comes out of nowhere. They have a moment. They're sitting silently. He's looking out, into the water. And then he just says to AD, I don't want to let you down. And rightfully so, AD is like, what are you talking about? Like, where's this coming from? It just came out of nowhere. Clay is like, oh, I'm just thinking, marriage is something serious. It's not something I take lightly. My parents were married, blah, 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 blah. And then AD is like, as any woman would, or maybe not any woman, as I would, she's like, is something going on? Are you having second thoughts? Like, what's tea? Why is this coming out of nowhere? But I guess it was just something that was just on his mind. And I feel like with a good man, it should be on your mind. Like, you should be concerned that you need to step it up. You need to do better. You do not need to be letting me down. But once he reveals that he's a Guyanese man, so many things made sense to me. So many things really clicked in my mind once he said he's a Guyanese man. And he was on that beach in a bandana. And if it's one thing you don't ever want to do, you don't ever want to trust a Guyanese man in a bandana. You don't. You really do not. And I hate to be the one to bring y'all that bad news, but facts are facts. Facts are facts. So then we have another moment with all of the couples on the beach. Again, at this point, now that I'm looking at my notes, I guess this was like their last couple days in the Dominican Republic, because why is y'all not at home yet? But I don't know if I remember episode 6, they had a night on the beach. They're having a day on the beach. So all the couples are once again meeting up. Everybody's getting to see everybody since all of the big blowouts. Jimmy has not learned his lesson. He once again goes and has a solo conversation with AD. He goes as far as thanking her. He goes as far as thanking AD because he feels like the conflict that him and Chelsea had brought them closer together. Can you imagine? You done got into it with your man. Your man goes to the woman that y'all got into it over because he made an inappropriate comment. And he says, thank you. I don't know, guys. I really don't know where this could possibly go next. Then what do we have? We have Johnny reveals to Laura that he's not interested in kids right now. He kind of brings that up out of nowhere, but he's like, yeah, I can't see myself having kids right now. I can't see myself having kids right now. I can't see myself having kids. I'm going to wait till I'm financially stable, blah, 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 blah. All very valid, but the conversation was very intense. Like, he felt very strongly about that. Then we have Jeramey with AD. He comes and he apologizes for blowing the joke, literally the joke that him and his spouse made about sexually assaulting a black woman. He comes to AD, he apologizes. She says, oh no, it's fine. She accepts it, whatever. Amy reveals to Jeramey. So now, like, all the couples, all the men are talking to all the women. Amy reveals to Jeramey that her father is actually not really on board with the process, and she's not really sure how he's going to react to this. Again, remember, Amy is Hispanic. So you already know, people of color, we don't play that. We don't play that. You're not going to meet someone within the span of a month, bring them home, and then say, hey, by the way, we're getting married. By the way, you're not. Surprise. No, you're not. Jeramey reveals that he wants to meet Sarah Ann. Yes, Jeramey is the one that told Sarah Ann that it wasn't enough. He had to move forward with Laura. Now Jeramey is telling Amy that he actually does want to meet Sarah Ann. For what? Who knows? It's really the look on Amy's face when he says that. Shorty was like, I'm not getting into this. Rightfully so, because you know I'm friends with your girl. Why would you come to me and tell me something like that? Like, what? We have Jimmy and Chelsea again. They have a couple cute moments on the beach, but she's again like, oh my God, is everything okay? Is everything fine? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? The insecurity is really jumping out. Also, will never deny the fact that she does not want to be with this man. So that's why she keeps asking if something's wrong, because she knows that something is wrong. What's wrong, Chelsea? You don't want to be here with this man. You're ready to go. You're ready to leave. You're ready to move on with your life. Rightfully so. Johnny and Amy have a conversation. You know, we still love Johnny and Amy. If Johnny and Amy have 10 fans, I'm one of them. If Johnny and Amy have 1 fan, it's me. If Johnny and Amy have no fans, I've passed on. So they're having a conversation where Amy is expressing that she's worried. She's worried, and I get that. When you're having so much fun with somebody, you're connecting so well, there's been no arguments, no disagreements, no friction, you're kind of waiting for the shoe to drop. Which I feel like is the shoe dropping is not, I'm not referring to abuse. I'm not referring to any of that. when I say waiting for the shoe to drop, you're waiting for that first bit of friction, that first disagreement, that first argument, because naturally so, it's like, okay, I love all these things about you. I need to see the things about you that are not so great. I need to see the things about you to see if that's something that I can work with. I can, for lack of a better term, put up with. You know what I mean? So Johnny's just really, reassuring her. He's being just the sweetest. Laura and Jeramey have a moment where Laura is like, yeah, I'm actually super worried about how hyper you are. Yes, you should be worried when you're with a class clown. I too would be worried about how hyper a foolish man like Jeramey is. But hey, girl, you like it. I love it. So finally, we're at the point in the episode where the couples are moving in together. It starts off with Jeramey and Laura. Let me just say, they start talking about bad habits. They start talking about cleanliness. They start talking about things like that. And I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. Nope. I just don't believe either of them are really that clean. I really don't. Now we move on to the couples are getting back home. They're getting back into their lives. Kenneth and Brittany. Kenneth gets his phone back. And it's like Brittany doesn't exist. She's literally in their home. She's unpacking. She's like, okay, which side of the dresser do you want? It's like he doesn't even hear her. I don't want to say he's ignoring her because I don't know if he was ignoring her, but it was like he doesn't even hear her. Like none of this had even occurred to him. He doesn't hear her at all. And it's to the point where she's upstairs, she's unpacking. This is a moment for them to build intimacy. She's asking him questions, rightfully so. He could help her. He could, help her organize her stuff. He could organize his own stuff. He's like, hey, I'm going to go downstairs. And he admits, he's like, I loved having this time with Brittany and, having this time away from my device, but I've missed my phone so much. Which I won't shame him for that because, these devices that we're so addicted to, it can start to get a little difficult when you're away for a long period of time. But to the point where you're fiending like that, Kenneth, where you get around your phone and you're just ignoring your shorty, I could understand if he's like, hey, Brittany, can you give me a couple minutes? Like, I want to check on things at school. I want to check on my family. No, she's asking him questions. He's just sitting there not saying nothing. Crazy. AD and Clay ends up at Clay's apartment. It's interesting. It's definitely a man's bachelor pad. Just random things sprawled everywhere. Nothing really decorated. Like, I could actually believe that was Clay's real home. Random books, random things. But then they have a moment on the couch where they start to delve into his father's infidelity. He admitted that his dad would take him along on these trips to meet women while he was having extramarital relationships. And you can clearly see that affected Clay, especially because his mom and his dad were together for 23 years. So I want to assume that if he wasn't cheating the whole time, he was cheating majority of the time. So, Clay is talking about dealing with his dad's infidelity, what it did to his family. And then AD is like, are you worried that you're going to cheat? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that he said no. But he did stress that because of that, he was interested in some couples therapy and things like that, which I definitely support 100%. No matter how far into your relationship you are or what stage of it is, I feel like it's never too early. As long as you establish that this is a person that you want to nurture a connection with, it can never hurt. But what killed me is Clay was like, I grew up in the time of, black men that were cheaters. And he was like, we have the Diddy's and we have the Will Smiths. Hold on. Since when is Will Smith a cheater? How did Will get in this? Why are you bringing Will into this? Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Faithful black man don't ever do Will. Now, has Will Smith cheated? I'm sure we'll find out eventually when Jada tells us something else we don't want to know. And I think another thing that was so funny with Clay is his lack of sincerity. He just kept saying over and over and over, yup, yup, yup. Yup, yup, yup. Yup, yup, yup. Yup, yup. Why do you keep saying yup? Like, that was literally driving me insane. Yup, yup, yup. Yup, yup, yup. Get it together, Clay. Jimmy, he goes to Chelsea's place. Chelsea's place gives very Chelsea. One thing I will always and forever hate is fake vines. Like, there's no reason at all for you to have fake vines in your room. So, of course, Chelsea's apartment is just sprawled with fake vines. And Jimmy meets her roommate. And it's so funny. They do, like, the testimonial portion. And Jimmy is like, yeah, she's way too much. I could never live here. I could never live here. So pretty much saying he's not living with Chelsea. And then that's where we end off with episode 7. We get right into episode 8, where Jeramey has Laura at his apartment. And let me just say, that was not his apartment. That was not his apartment. If it's one thing I know what an Airbnb looks like. That was not Jeramey's apartment. There were no curtains. There was nothing hung up. There was no personal touches. It was very generic. Very generic Airbnb. Nice try. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So then we get into a very big portion. Like, this pretty much eats up like episode 8 with Brittany and Kenneth, where Brittany pretty much brings up to Kenneth, like, you're not touching me. Like, I feel like you are being distant ever since we got home. You're always on your phone. You're never here. You're not touching me. You're not kissing me. You're not any of that. And she pretty much ends up gaslighting herself into being like, oh, maybe I'm just being dramatic about it, blah, 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 blah. You're not. For this to be a brand new relationship, and I understand because Brittany and Kenneth took a vow to not have any sexual relations until they're married. As a Muslim, of course, I fully respect that, love that. But these are not Muslims. You ain't touching me. You ain't cuddling me. You ain't trying to kiss me. You ain't trying to do none of that. Absolutely no way. No way at all. So Chelsea ended up moving in with Jimmy. So Jimmy works from home. So Jimmy is upstairs working. Chelsea is downstairs. And her friends come over. She has a couple friends come over. They all look like variations of her, which is so funny to me. So her friends come over. Naturally they're like, girl, what's tea? What happened? What's going on? Why is she going to tell these girls, oh yeah, everybody was into him? Everybody like who, Chelsea? Other than you and Jessica, who was into Jimmy? Don't worry, I'll wait. Chelsea, don't get in front of company and you start acting funny. Then she tells her friends, oh yeah, like he hasn't kissed me. He hasn't really kissed me. And she's questioning, if he's just that into her. And it's so funny. Jimmy finally comes downstairs and, they greet him, they hug him, whatever. Immediately after he sits down, her friend is like, what's the number one thing you loved about Chelsea? And I swear to God, y'all, that's me. That's me. I talk all the time about how much I love my friends, how in love I am with my friends. If you are going to date my friend, you're going to love my friend, you're going to marry my friend, it is imperative that you, not necessarily that you love them, because I don't want to compare the love, but it is imperative that you do more for them than I do, that you give them more than I do, that you want to give them more than I do. So her saying that immediately is hilarious. And he responds to this question by saying, the number one thing that he loved about her is when they met in the pods. He doesn't mention Jessica's names, but he's like, oh, I had a long day. I think he said like he had a rough date. She came in the pods. Chelsea realized something was wrong. She understood and immediately comforted him. Of all the things that you can say when someone asks you the number one thing you love about your partner, you're going to say how they comforted you when you were having difficulty with another woman. Men are just so deeply unserious. They should be beat. And I would always be an advocate for men getting beat, because why would you say something like that? Why? And it's so funny, her friends are like, it's so funny because you look nothing like her type. And then they were like, oh, is Chelsea your type? He lies and says yes, because that's absolutely not the truth. But whatever. Then we go into Amy and Johnny again. They're in the house and they're discussing budget cuts in order to save up to buy a home. So Johnny is like, oh yeah, cutting back, we need to cut back. And then Amy, the POC that she is, a Hispanic especially, is like, yeah, I definitely love the idea of saving money, of cutting back on certain expenses in order to save money. But make no mistake, money is made to be spent. She was like, I still want to live. I still want to have a good time. I still want to travel. I still want to do things. So don't expect any major cutbacks. And I feel her on that. I feel like cutting back and saving money is for men. I'm just a girl. You're supposed to be saving for our home. I'm not. I'm just a girl. Like, sheesh. They once again go into the conversation, not once again, but they go into the conversation of children. Johnny is worried about Amy not being on birth control. And from the conversation, it seems like she's not interested in being on birth control. And he's like, all the women that I dated before, I had no issues being intimate with them because they were actively on birth control, even though birth control is not effective enough for a person that is saying, I definitely don't want to have any kids until I'm ready. So they say it's something that, they think about. Johnny is asking her, like, is this something you're interested in or something you want to think about? And Amy is like, no, rightfully so. And then Amy is like, hey, we also briefly discussed you getting a vasectomy. And he was like, yeah, I know. And it's not on you. It's not always on the woman. Okay. If you're saying you're definitely good, snip, snip, buddy. Get her done. Especially because vasectomies are much safer than birth control. So I don't see why not. So we're back to this Kenneth and Brittany conversation that we saw briefly in the beginning of the episode. They're having the bigger conversation where Brittany is basically complaining, like, you're not loving on me, you're not touching on me, you're not anything. And she's basically saying, this is the beginning of our relationship and I don't feel any passion. And when I tell you, niggas going nig, because don't you know, Kenneth immediately begins to gaslight her. He's like, oh, you can't judge our entire relationship off of one day just because I got home late. And then when I got home at 1:30 in the morning, I woke you up. She was like, you woke me up at 1:30 in the morning. I had to be up at 5. So no, I didn't want to kiss. I didn't want to hug. I didn't want to cuddle. I was in the middle of sleeping. But she was like, 1:30 in the morning doesn't matter because we're here for other times throughout the day. You're not hugging me. I don't feel the passion. And then Kenneth is going to say, oh, well, that feeling is not mutual. So if you're saying you don't feel passion, if there's no passion here, that's not coming from me. That's coming from you. That's coming from you. Gaslight, gaslight, gaslight. But too bad, Kenneth, because you're not a girl boss. So Kenneth gaslights the hell out of her. He's like, he begins to be spiritually manipulative, and I will say abusive. He's like, oh, I'm going to get what it is that I need. And if you're not feeling any passion in this relationship, it's not fair to me or you that we continue with it. I'm going to get what it is that I need and that desire, because that's how God operates with me. And I have to say, when he said that, it reminded me of why, and Allah knows best, but I don't think I would ever entertain any sort of clergy, any sort of imams or shuyukhs or muftis or students of knowledge or any of that. Because when I tell you, the spiritual abuse is very real. To say that's how God operates with me, especially in the tone he said it and saying it, like using it to as a response that he did, kind of gives off like, oh, in God's eyes, I'm special. Like, I'm not like you. I'm special in front of God. And this is the problem when you get with these clergy who feel like them being clergy is manifest destiny. And they have no humility. They throw all the humility out the window. So he just proceeds to gaslight her, basically tells her the lack of passion in this relationship is your fault. She brings up the fact that they're having this conversation in the evening. She brings up the fact that, you haven't kissed me all day. This is the beginning of our relationship. We're a few days in to finally living together after we done gotten engaged. You ain't kissed me all day. You haven't kissed me once. He doesn't address that at all. He doesn't say anything about that. But he immediately goes into, oh, well, if you're not feeling any passion, that's on you. You're not addressing the fact that you're not acting passionately towards me, so you're probably not feeling it either. He's like, oh, they basically break up. Without, saying I'm done with this, I'm over this. By this point, Brittany is crying. Kenneth is like, okay, give me a hug. So, we know it's not no beef. It is beef. And I would like to, of course, as long as it's safe, I want to encourage all women to beef with men and to really show them what beef really is. Because you think you're going to gaslight me, end our whole relationship, because you don't want to admit to the fact that you haven't touched me, you haven't looked at me, you haven't talked to me since you got that phone back. And you think we're going to be cool, we're going to be cordial, it's going to be cute? Absolutely not. He gives her some little hug. She says to him, like, I don't even want to let you go. I'm feeling for Brittany in this moment. She's like, I don't even want to let you go. He's like, yeah, we're not beefing. We're good, right? Literally turns away from her, pulls out his phone, goes in the other room. The mics recorded him on the phone talking to somebody. He's like, yeah, bro, I'm about to pack up my stuff now and I'll be there. Leaves this woman out in the living room by herself crying. No comfort, no nothing. And this is why men deserve nothing. Nothing at all. But thankfully they break up. But I will tell you, apparently, this is alleged. This is all alleged. I don't know any of this to be true. Allegedly, his cousin, Kenneth's real life cousin, commented on Facebook and was like, yeah, Kenneth is actually gay. He only went on the show in an attempt to meet a woman to try and appease our family. But Kenneth is a gay man. All of this is alleged. I have no idea if that's actually true or not. But what I will say, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. That would make sense why he don't want to kiss or touch or nothing on this woman, because he ain't into women's. He like men's. But this is all alleged. That lady could be some little whoever from whatever. May not even be his real life cousin. Whatever. But thank God they break up. We move on to Jimmy and Chelsea. Chelsea starts again telling Jimmy, you haven't touched me all day. You only kissed me once. You haven't kissed me. Jimmy is like, yeah, I told you that I had busted my lip, which is a valid reason because, don't get me wrong, y'all are having relations, cool. But I feel like kissing somebody with a busted, bloody lip is still too much. Still too much. Even if you're married, it's too much. Chelsea brings up the real thing. She's like, ever since you got followed on Instagram by Jessica, I feel like you're acting funny. And I don't know. That could be true. It could not be true. But I feel like either way, Chelsea is going to blow that out of proportion. Way out of proportion. So I think that's what this argument was really about. But Jeramey is like clenching. He's not saying anything. He's not yelling, but he's clenching his jaw. He's clenching his jaw a lot, which I'm like, okay, he must be angry. So then he ends up saying to Chelsea, Jeramey is like, well, you know, these past couple of days, you've been really clingy. Jaw drops. My jaw dropped. Chelsea's jaw dropped. All of our jaws are just on the floor. She starts crying as she normally does. And she's like, clingy? What do you mean clingy? How are you going to tell me that I've been clingy? Blah, 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 blah. So that just sets her off. She's crying. She's like, oh, you know, we had lunch. We went out. And then we went upstairs and we had sex. Jeramey says to her, well, you're the one that wanted to have sex. And I even wanted a breather from that. What? Y'all, forget on the floor. My jaw was in the earth's core. What? So, of course, this sends her spiraling. She walks away. She's crying. He packs up his little toiletry bag. He's like, I'm leaving for the night. So I guess they didn't end up at Jeramey's apartment. I guess that they're at some little space. I don't think it's her apartment either. I think they're just at some home they had put them in. Jessica and Laura reunite. Jessica and Laura go out. They have a kiki. They have a time. Laura ends up exposing the fact that Sarah Ann, remember this is the love triangle was Laura, Sarah Ann, and Jeramey. Can't believe there was even a triangle over that loser. Sarah Ann sent Jeramey a message like, hey, you know, it was great to meet you. Thanks for the experience. But she ends the message with saying, if you ever change your mind, if you ever feel like you want to make a different decision, hit me up. Hit me up. Contact me. That's crazy to say to a man that's engaged. Crazy. Bonkers bananas. The second love triangle we had was Jessica, Chelsea, and Jeramey. So Jessica ends up admitting that Jeramey sent her a friend request. I don't know if it was on Facebook or Instagram, whatever. Sent her a friend request. As soon as she accepted it, he put his own page on private. So he saw what she looked like. And she saw him, but he thinks that she didn't see him. So they had like a little, they didn't talk or anything, but some sort of interaction on the World Wide Webs. And episode 8 ends with Laura expressing the fact that she's pissed, rightfully so. She's like, Sarah Ann is very disrespectful for messaging him that, and she hates the fact that he liked the message. Like, she feels like he shouldn't have said anything. He shouldn't have reacted. He shouldn't have nothing. So that brings us into the last episode of part 2, episode 9. So episode 9 starts off with Chelsea and Jeramey. Jeramey comes back to the house. Again, they talk about things briefly. They make a couple jokes, but they don't really get into the crux of the issues. They kind of just kiss, make up, and gloss over it. Jeramey is like, oh, you know, I know I need to work on my delivery and whatever. And Chelsea says, I need to work on my emotions and not being so sensitive. Is that all you think you need to work on, Chelsea? Be honest. Be honest with me here. Be real. Be real with me here, babe. Are you serious? So, they kiss, they make up, whatever. Jeramey and Laura meet Laura's family. They meet Laura's parents, her brother, and her sister, I believe. And they bring a bunch of dogs. I feel like coming over to my home and bringing your dog is insane. Like, you don't get to bring pets into my house, but these are a very specific color of people, so that's what they do. The whole time that Laura's family is there, she's taking small digs at Jeramey. Jeramey is taking small digs at her. It becomes very uncomfortable after a while, and I'm like, I'm over it. I'm over it. Jeramey is like making all of these jokes. He tells her family that, Laura has a lot of little side comments that he's learning to tune out. What? Why would you say something like that? And apparently, they reveal that Love is Blind comes with background checks and psych evaluations. I'm not believing it. Or maybe they're purposely choosing people that have sketchy backgrounds. Laura reveals, I don't remember if it was Laura or Jeramey. It was Laura. She reveals that Jeramey was choosing between her and another girl. She reveals the fact that the other girl had reached out to him and messaged him on Instagram. He's upset. The whole situation is uncomfortable, and you just have to know what to bring up in front of your family and what not to. And I feel like they did too much in front of her family, to the point where Laura and her mom and her sister step outside, and her mom is like, I'm worried because you guys actually talk very harshly to each other. And that's a fair critique because, girl, do y'all want to be together or not? So then we get to Johnny and Amy, per usual, having the time of their lives. AD is meeting Clay's mom and his sister. I do not like the fact that when they're walking up to the restaurant, it's raining. AD is holding her own umbrella, as well as all the flowers for Clay's mom. AD gets into the restaurant. She expresses the fact that she's cold. Clay's mom has to give AD a sweater. Clay has on a whole sweater. He doesn't offer it to AD. Clay's mom gives her a shawl. That's very worrisome to me. Little things like that make something very big. Clay is upset when AD brings up the fact that he works so much, and she's like, he's not coming home, he's at this property, but on the nights where he could come home, he just chooses to stay somewhere else. And she's like, oh, I understand he wants his commute to be easier for work, but I would like some sacrifices to be made. So Clay's mom is very sweet about it. Clay has a very nasty attitude. He responds very disgustingly. He's like, oh, well, what's the problem? And AD is like, whoa. Whoa. I love the fact that AD very subtly, but not so subtly, checks someone to the point where they start to evaluate their own behavior, because don't lose your mind right now. Get yourself together. Clay's mom is like, a working man is like, a good man. He has to work. He has to provide for the house. But she also tells Clay, you need to make time. Like, if you care, you're going to make time, period. And a lot of times I feel like when women complain about their men working a lot, it's probably because you're not seeing the fruits of that labor. Or even if you are, no amount of money or bag or home or any of that is going to account for your partner not being home to love you. So I think it's actually a good sign that AD wants Clay home some more. Chelsea meets Jimmy's friends. Jimmy's close friends are two women. It goes well. They always got to bring up the fact that they were in a love triangle. Of course, Chelsea brings it up. Of course, Chelsea is talking about their personal relationship. Of course, they start talking about their sex life in front of his friends. Very inappropriate. Very inappropriate. Then we have Amy meets Johnny's family. I love Johnny's family. They all look like one person, but he has a great family. They're nice. They're cheery. They're accepting of her. They're talking to her. They're asking them questions. They're getting information. Love them. His sisters right away are like, it's a yes. It's a hell yes. Then we get to the crux of things. Episode 9, the end of episode 9, we have Laura and Jeramey. Laura comes downstairs. It's heated. It's heated. She asks Jeramey, where were you at until 5 a.m? She ends up, he never really admits to it. He never really comes straight out and says it, but by way of her pulling teeth, Jeramey was out with Sarah Ann till 5 a.m. So Laura is like, what? I need an explanation for this, rightfully so. So Jeramey is like, oh, I'm meeting up with some of the guys from the pods, and they said, hey, by the way, Sarah Ann is going to be there. And he's like, oh, so I'm like, no big deal. I just go. She sees me. We give each other a hug, and then we go on about our business. And then he's like, oh, we ended up talking. After we got outside, I think they went to like an escape room. After we get out the escape room, we ended up staying there afterwards and having a conversation. So Laura is like, that's a lie. And he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I have your location. You weren't at, I guess, the place that he was talking about was like down south. She was like, you were up north. And up north is where Sarah Ann lives. Sarah Ann. And I'm like, the whole time I'm looking at Jeramey, I'm like, even if you and this girl were just talking, if you were an engaged man and you met this woman in the pods a handful of times, to the point where you were like, actually, no, I'm going to decide not to move forward with this. What do y'all possibly have to talk about till 5 a.m? What do y'all possibly have to talk about? So, rightfully so, Laura is telling him, this is what happens. You should have shut things down last time. You didn't. When she messaged you, when she said, oh, if you change your mind, you should have shut that down. And he absolutely should have. Or if you know that this woman is banking on you changing your mind about your fiance. Okay? Once you found out that she was going to be at this place that you were going to be at, you should have said, you know what? I'm actually going to sit this one out, guys. Or I'm actually going to hang back. But you didn't. And that's if this whole meetup that he was talking about is even true. Because how did you go from a meetup to this woman's house till 5 o'clock in the morning? So, Laura's pissed. And she's saying things that are true. She's like, I didn't bring you any baggage. When we got together, I didn't bring you another person, another anything. There were no crazy exes. There were no nothing. There was nobody else from the pods. It was just you and me. And you're bringing me all this BS. 100% true. 100% true. Mind you, this is the morning of they're supposed to meet Jeramey's mother. And she was like, now I don't want to sit in front of your mother and be fake, because she's going to ask me how I feel about her son. And I don't have an answer for her. I don't have anything positive or good to say about her son. And I'm like, period. So Laura's asking her, I forget what she asked him exactly, but she's asking him like about the situation with Sarah Ann. Do you know Jeramey responds and says, I don't want to talk about it right this second. And this is why men deserve nothing. Can you imagine you got caught with the lady we were in a love triangle with? You got caught at her house at 5 o'clock in the morning. And not only did you just get caught, you just got caught in a lie. Because you lied and told me that y'all was out in a parking lot of a bar. And you were at her house. And you talking about, I don't want to talk about it right this second. And this is why I forever and always tell women, if there's ever a love triangle, make sure you leave it. Make sure you leave it. Don't ever stay in a situation where, and not only to women, to anybody, don't ever stay in a situation where somebody is comfortable telling you and showing you that they're trying to choose between you and another person. Always leave. And that is the conclusion of episode 9. But episode 10 is going to be out in a couple days. And I don't want to wait for a whole nother week to recap that. So we might do another Televised Tuesdays episode. It just won't be dropping on a Tuesday. But yeah, girl. Episode 7, 8, and 9 was a ride. It was a doozy. But yes, thank y'all so much for tuning in to episode 2 of Televised Tuesdays. Again, please, let's talk about it in the comments. I need to know your thoughts, your observations. I need the tea, girl. But I will see y'all for episode 3. Bye. Assalamu alaikum.